Spinoza was a devout defender of religious orthodoxy, a lie, a fabrication, a historical smokescreen designed to cloak a dangerous truth. Baruch Spinoza, a rebellious thinker, dared to dismantle the divine narrative that God unequivocally chose Israel. In the shadowy corridors of his mind, a radical hypothesis simmered, one that would forever sever ties with tradition and shatter the serene facade of 17th-century theology. Religion, to Spinoza, was not a divine decree, but a societal construct. God's so-called selection was a fable, an expedient story molded by human hands wielded for power and control. Spinoza's forbidden answer echoed through Europe, striking fear into the hearts of rabbis and priests. His was not merely skepticism, it was intellectual insurrection, excommunicated, vilified, banished by the Amsterdam Jewish community. Labeled a heretic, his name became a whisper, his ideas an existential threat. Yet the questions he posed remain, churning under the surface of collective consciousness. Was God's covenant with Israel a divine truth or a human tale? Spinoza's truth-telling was a clarion call. It beckons us to venture into the shadowy alleys of history, to confront uncomfortable realities. Are we too ready to question the unquestionable? Europe, 17th century, a boiling cauldron of religious fervor and ideological conflict. In this turbulent environment, a man named Baruch Spinoza emerged, a philosopher with a mind as sharp as a forged blade. He analyzed the world with cold logic, cutting through dogma and deconstructing age-old myths. Spinoza was a paradox. A Jew, born within the safe harbors of Amsterdam, yet he stood on the fringes. His scholarly inquiries ignited fear and outrage. He ventured where few dared, dissecting the sacred narratives that glued societies together. Central to his controversial crucible was the questioning of Israel's divine selection. The prevailing belief, God had chosen the Hebrews as his people, a divine covenant inked across holy parchments, heralded by prophets. But Spinoza, with his relentless pursuit of truth, saw something more human beneath the divine varnish. His analysis was unsettling. The concept of a chosen people, he argued, was not a celestial decree. It was a cultural framework, a tale to unify a tribe. He suggested that what was perceived as divine favor was a social contract, crafted by leaders, prophets, high priests, a powerful narrative machine engineered for survival and dominance. Excommunication was swift. The Amsterdam Jewish community deemed Spinoza an outcast. His ideas spread like an ink stain on parchment. Rabbis and priests felt the ground tremble beneath their feet. A mirror was held up to the face of faith, revealing cracks in the foundation. Spinoza's logic dissected the past. He pointed out historical anomalies, examined the intersection of myth and power. Did God truly whisper in the ear of Abraham? Or was this whispered by the scribes carving identities into stone and into the soul of a burgeoning nation? His questions were a scalpel, cutting deep into the husk of assumed truths. If God's covenant was a construct, then what of other narratives? What of the stories, the traditions, the beliefs? The ramifications were seismic, a query that transcended Judaism, challenging all faiths that rose on a similar premise. The stones, Spinoza, cast into the pool of history, still ripple outward. Each wave demands courage from the thoughtful, to inspect, to question, to acknowledge the shadows beneath narratives revered. A call to challenge the constructs that bind us, to wonder if perhaps we stand on stories, not rock-solid truths. Baruch Spinoza, a heretic, a philosopher, a provocateur. In a world of absolute certainty, he offered a different perspective. The truth of Israel's selection, a human tale, a parable of power that still dares us to ask, are we ready to confront the shadows ourselves? In the shadowy corridors of history, one figure stands apart. Baruch Spinoza, an excommunicated Dutch philosopher. He turned the world of theology on its head. He challenged the very foundations of divine selection. Was Israel truly chosen by God? Or was this narrative an ancient power play, a myth woven into the fabric of faith? To deconstruct Spinoza's subversive proposal, we first navigate the foundations of Judaic tradition, the Torah, a text shrouded in mysticism and reverence. It details a unique covenant, a chosen people. Yet as Spinoza meticulously analyzed these scriptures, he saw a world constructed not by divine hands but by human ambition. Was it blasphemy or a revelation? Spinoza's lens stripped away the divine veil. He examined the Torah not as sacred scripture but as a work of literature, a narrative crafted to consolidate power among a nascent community, to forge a distinct identity in a fractured world. His hypothesis: the covenant was a construct, intentional, political, a stroke of human genius cloaked in providential language. But why stop at Israel? If the narrative of divine selection for one nation was a construct, could the same skepticism not apply elsewhere? Christianity, Islam, all religions that echo similar motifs. Spinoza's thesis was a disruption, transcending Judaism. It poked at the universal hope for divine favor, a deeply uncomfortable notion for those tethered to unquestioned faith. Was the divine covenant ever about divine love? Or was it about survival and identity wrapped in divine rhetoric? The implications of Spinoza's ideas rippled beyond theology. They influenced philosophical inquiry and political thought. If the selection of Israel was a human narrative, then so too could be the foundations of modern states. Nations built not on divine sanction, but on stories, myths, and unverified truths. The consequences were and still are immense. An opening of Pandora's box, questioning political legitimacy itself. Centuries later, Spinoza's forbidden answer still whispers through the halls of power and faith. It is a call to challenge constructs long deemed unassailable, to confront the shadows lurking beneath celebrated narratives, a radical legacy of courage and inquiry, embracing the possibility of stories over certainties, construct over divinity. Spinoza dared us to peer under the cloak of dogma, to ask the unaskable questions. Are the foundations of faith human-made narratives? Can we embrace a world where stories guide us, divorced from divine certainty? The shadows beckon. The narrative's solidity quivers. Do we dare to look? The 17th century, a time of fervent religious belief. Enter Baruch Spinoza, a philosopher unafraid to dance with danger. Born in Amsterdam in 1632, in the cradle of Jewish orthodoxy, but his mind burned with forbidden questions. Spinoza challenged truths etched in stone, truths believed to be the words of God. Yet, he wondered, did the divine hand truly select Israel? Or did human hands craft the narrative? A perilous question, heresy in an era where faith ruled supreme. The call for truth led Spinoza down a treacherous path. His lens was not one of mysticism. It was grounded, logical. He observed the undulations of history, the rise and fall of political might, the shaping of collective identities. He saw the election of Israel as a socio-political phenomenon, a group finding its identity amidst turmoil and exile, a story of survival woven through generations. His conclusion: Israel's chosenness might be myth, a powerful story, crafted to unify, to strengthen bonds across centuries of scattering. Spinoza suggested that the genesis of this narrative was not divine. It was born of necessity, a construct, not celestial ordination. Condemnation swiftly followed, branding him a pariah, his ideas a subversion of divine authority. Dangerous, his name excommunicated. But Spinoza didn't flinch. For him, the pursuit of truth was a sacred duty. He was casting light into the shadows where history's inconvenient truths lay buried. Centuries have passed, yet Spinoza's shadow looms large. His questions still provoke. They force us to examine cherished narratives. Are they set upon the bedrock of divine will or crafted by human artifice? Spinoza invites us to approach history with a surgeon's precision, to dissect it, to discern flesh from fiction. His legacy is one of inquiry, a clarion call to deconstruct dogma, to peer at the seams where myth and reality conflate. He challenges us to accept the fluidity of narratives, to see them as tools, created to guide societies, to bind communities. In this, there is both power and peril, but the invitation remains. Do we dare to trespass into the labyrinth of faith and history? Can we hold these stories delicately, knowing they may be constructs, yet influential ones? This is Spinoza's challenge, to embrace the unknown, to traverse the shadows, to unravel what once seemed absolute. Now the question is asked, the gauntlet thrown. Do we dare to follow? Baruch Spinoza, a name whispered among the brave, revered by the audacious. His was a mind unshackled, unfettered by the weights of orthodoxy. In Amsterdam's 17th century crucible, Spinoza challenged the divine narrative, questioned the chosenness of Israel with surgical acumen. For this, excommunication was swift, the banishment absolute. But in the shadows of his isolation, Spinoza's thoughts took flight, seeped into the marrow of the Enlightenment, stirred embers of discord into flames of debate. Spinoza was exiled, his works labeled heretical. Yet they carried a seed of potential, the power to ignite minds across boundaries and beliefs. He saw history as a fabric woven by human hands, each thread symbolic, each stitch deliberate, a construct of our own making. His lens was that of a forensic historian. He called for the scalpel of logic, a demand to distinguish between sinew and embellishment, an intellectual autopsy on the narratives we hold dear. He didn't debunk history. He simply sought to understand its architecture. Spinoza's radical proposition: narratives are fluid, mutable, conduits for collective identity, culturally constructed guide ropes, bound communities as much as they constrained inquiry. Here lay their power and their peril: faith, mythology, legacies crafted by human artifice. This was no denouncement of divinity. It was a call to intellectual arms, an invitation to engage with history's tapestry, to challenge and redefine its borders. Walk the edge where myth bleeds into reality. Spinoza's challenge echoes through the ages. His invitation reverberates. Dare we trespass into history's labyrinth? Hold these crafted tales with care, knowing their profound impact yet questioning their genesis. An inquiry, fraught with peril but ripe with possibility. Religious texts. Cultural narratives. They guide and guard, often wielded to justify the status quo. Yet Spinoza dared to engage with them not as passive inheritors, but active interpreters. He sparked the notion that truths are crafted, not decreed. By embracing the unknown, Spinoza pressed us forward, into shadows where once certainty reigned, encouraged us to unravel what once seemed sacred, absolute, a challenge and call to reconstruct comprehension itself. Thus, Spinoza cast his gauntlet, to step beyond comfort, beyond acceptance, into the realm where questions linger unanswered, the heart of inquiry laid bare. Do we accept the challenge? Do we dare to follow? Baruch Spinoza, the rebel philosopher of the 17th century, a thinker who courted controversy with each measured word. His proposition echoed through time. Did divine will truly deem one nation preeminent above all, or was the concept of chosen people a man-made construct? Spinoza scrutinized Israel's divine selection through a lens of reason. To him, The dogma of a singular exclusive divine favor appeared shallow. The narratives of Exodus, the covenant, not dismissed, but dissected for their symbolic worth, not their exclusivity. Deconstruction was his method, a stark departure from the blind faith of his milieu. He wielded question marks against established periods. His argument distilled, morality isn't confined geographically. Righteousness isn't restricted by lineage. In his theological political treatise, Spinoza argued divine law was universal truth, not selective privilege. To him, calling any one society divinely superior was to misunderstand the nature of the divine itself. God, in Spinoza's view, was nature, infinite, impartial, beyond anthropomorphic constraints and human biases. With his quill, Spinoza painted a worldview, unbound by borders or bloodlines. His treatise offered a cosmic democracy, each soul, each tribe equally within God's domain. Adherence to divine law, then, was not about birthright, but behavior, morality, devotion, attainable by any who pursued it with sincerity. Outrage followed. Accusations of heresy flared. He was excommunicated from his own community, cast out. Yet his rationale stood unmoved. He left behind old convictions, endured social death to illuminate new paths of thought. Centuries later, we reflect. Spinoza's audacity nudges us to reconsider history, to dismantle doctrines that suffocate rather than sustain. His philosophy opens the door to an egalitarian spirituality, a panorama where holiness is accessible, not enforced by ancestry. As we dive deeper into his logic, we encounter an invitation, an intellectual charge. Question what society sanctifies as sacred. Scrutinize origins of beliefs, to seek understanding where silence commanded before. Spinoza dares us to deconstruct divine monopoly on morality, challenge the icons that shepherd ideology. His legacy whispers, intrepid. By questioning the divine favoritism, we unlock a broader humanity where existential potential is boundless. The inquiry remains daring today as it was then. Are we bold enough to heed Spinoza's counsel? Will we, like him, traverse the daunting realm of forbidden questions? The answers lie in the whispers of courage, amidst shadows, waiting to be embraced. Few dared to listen. But Spinoza thrived in the controversial. He painted a world where dogma bows to debate, his ideas light a treacherous path, a lens through which sacred is scrutinized. In the 17th century, his thoughts were incendiary. He stripped divinity from its pedestal, challenging what was deemed untouchable. Spinoza's intellect cracked open the doors of orthodox theology. Shadows receded, revealing a new landscape, a world where belief is not tied to bloodlines. He saw a world where holiness wasn't confined, not exclusive, not arbitrary. This was dangerous thinking. It questioned the very fabric of Abrahamic narratives. Did God really choose Israel? Spinoza dared to ask it, and that act alone threatened centuries of tradition. His notions, buried in the swelling tide of enlightenment, have resurfaced. In a secular world growing more accepting of doubt, Spinoza's questions unlock doors long sealed by faith. The Enlightenment era seeded a revolution of the mind, a desperate insatiability for rationality and evidence. Scholars began revisiting Spinoza's meditations. They found threads of truth in his defiance. His was not an outright rejection of faith, but an appeal for its evolution, for a synthesis of belief and reason. This synthesis was radical. It suggested faith could coexist with critical inquiry, in a delicate balance, an intellectual ecosystem where dogma serves reason, where understanding supersedes acceptance. This was Spinoza's forbidden answer, his divine challenge. To challenge divine favoritism is to challenge the hierarchy of humanity. He demystified the notion of a singular chosen people. Instead, Spinoza painted a portrait of universal potential. A tapestry not dictated by geography or genealogy but enriched by collective human experience. Scholars, revived by Spinoza's once heretical ideas, envisioned a new spirituality, a panoramic view of humanity, untethered from the dictates of rigid ancestry, universal accessibility to divinity, bold, dangerous. Historically, such ideas paved avenues for modern secular societies. Societies where the rights of individuals are paramount, where knowledge has slain ignorance and dogma is starved by inquiry. Our current era thirsts for such courage, the courage to confront the myths that guide us, to question the origins and ownership of moral truths. Spinoza's legacy is a ghost, haunting those who dare think beyond the accepted. These forbidden questions remain alive, whispering with the promise of expansive unity, challenging the divine monopoly on morality. They can be the foundation for a new understanding, should we choose to embrace them. Can we? In the shadows of history, Spinoza's voice calls to those brave enough to listen, eager to rethink everything. The rewards are boundless, masked in whispers of courage, waiting like a secret. Dare we embrace them? In the shadows of history, Benedetto de Spinoza's questions linger, unresolved, formidable. His audacity shook the foundations of faith. He dared ask, did God really choose Israel, or was it a construct of men? These questions unsettled the powerful, roused fear, spurred curiosity. Spinoza saw Scripture as a product, not divine dictate, a bold claim, heretical in its time. Born in Amsterdam, exiled by the Jewish community, his ideas sparked enmity. Branded forbidden, his analysis, ruthless logic, he dissected the Bible with the precision of a surgeon. Myth, he argued, must not replace reason. Faith should not blind inquiry. To Spinoza, the notion of divine favoritism was strange. Israel was grand, yeah, but chosen? Seen through the lens of rationalism, the doctrine crumbled. For Spinoza, morality transcended borders, religions, even divine preference. To limit its source was to bind its potential. He envisioned a world shaped by mutual understanding, not divine decree. Fast forward to the modern era. The echoes of his thoughts are louder now. Religious nationalism grows rampant. Claims of divine favor stir conflict, divide society. In places where secularism grows, Spinoza's perspective is no longer heretical, but necessary. We must face the myths that hold us back, reevaluate the grand narratives we cling to. Today, society expands upon his questions. The rights of individuals hold precedence. Inquiry thrives where dogma is weak. In this climate, Spinoza's ghost seems less spectral, more vital, urging humanity to push beyond inherited beliefs. His legacy wields a key. It can unlock dialogue, dismantling the notion of exclusive divine rights. The implications stretch far. They provoke examination of moral paradigms dictated for centuries. Can morality exist independently of divine text? Spinoza would argue it can. That truth is not the preserve of any one faith. Divine monopolies on morality risk stifling growth, encouraging stagnation. Dare we listen to Spinoza's ancient whispers, rethink accepted truths? Can we view religious texts as historical artifacts rather than infallible doctrines? It takes courage, but the reward is unity, universal understanding, once unimagined. Spinoza's radical message awaits its moment. It urges societies to dare, to embrace shared morality's potential. In this perilous exploration, the understanding of identity evolves. It compels humanity to transcend the exclusions of purported favoritism, to embrace commonality over division. Spinoza calls us out of the shadows, into the stark, enlightening reality of reason. Baruch Spinoza, a name that still echoes in the corridors of forbidden thought. His legacy, a powerful testament to the courage it takes to question the unquestionable. Spinoza rebelled against the divine monopoly on truth. He contended that morality did not belong to any one faith, a radical idea, especially in the 17th century, where dogma reigned supreme and religious authority went unchallenged. Spinoza was excommunicated, declared a heretic. Yet his ideas could not be banished. They persisted, whispering through the ages. His philosophy laid the groundwork for future intellectuals, those brave enough to challenge the established order. Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire and Kant found inspiration in Spinoza's audacity. They pursued truth, independent of divine decree. In questioning whether God truly chose Israel, Spinoza dared us to reconsider, to view religious texts not as infallible dogma but as historical artifacts, contextual pieces of a larger human tapestry. This perspective is dangerous to orthodoxy. It challenges the idea of divine favoritism, threatens to unravel centuries of accepted truth. Spinoza's legacy is not just in challenging religious dogma, it's in advocating for inclusivity, championing a philosophy grounded in reason. He urged societies to abandon exclusionary theology, to embrace commonality. In Spinoza's vision, the boundaries drawn by religion become irrelevant. We are united in reason, not divided by divine decree. His radical message is not yet fully realized. But it waits. It urges societies to dare, to embrace the potential of a shared morality, one based not on who is chosen but on universal truths. Spinoza calls us out of the shadows, into the stark, enlightening reality of reason. He challenges the very notion of identity, urging us to transcend exclusion's grip. Spinoza's influence endures, echoing through time in the works of later philosophers and thinkers. His ideas inspire those who find courage in conviction. His radical legacy calls us to action, to rethink accepted truths and envision a world built on inclusivity, grounded in reason. The question remains, dare we listen? Can we heed Spinoza's ancient whispers? The reward is unity, universal understanding unimagined by past generations. Spinoza beckons, inviting humanity to embrace shared morality, to challenge divine monopolies and step into a reality illuminated by reason. A legacy, awaiting its true moment, one we must seize if we dare. In the dim corridors of thought, Spinoza steps forward, unwavering. His questions cut through the centuries like a blade through smoke. Did God truly choose Israel, or does the divine weave through all, unbound by scripture or creed? Spinoza's whispers challenge the sanctified silences. He shatters the illusion that divine favoritism maps the fate of nations. Daring to question the firmament's foundation, he draws battle lines between blind faith and illuminated reason. His voice, quiet yet seismic, asks us to reconsider identity's anchors, urges us to transcend the age-old barriers of exclusion. In this audacity there is enduring power, an unsettling call to action for the brave, the thinkers, the outliers. Yet Spinoza did more than challenge orthodoxy. He mapped a future beyond divine clutches, showed us a path lit by the stark light of reason. His radical vision proposes a world where humanity unites in shared morality, rather than in the divisive grip of divine decrees. And so, Spinoza remains, a haunting presence. His legacy waits, coiled tight like a storm on the horizon, enticing us with the promise of unity, of understanding unfettered by tradition's chains. But there hangs a question, as haunting as his gaze. Do we dare to listen, to abandon the comfort of unchallenged beliefs, to seize this moment? In Spinoza's wake, we stand at the edge of enlightenment, on the brink of a journey. Shall we risk the plunge guided by reason's light, or cling to the shadows of doctrine? The choice, like his whispers, echoes eternally.